desire mixes desire the watching the say teaching a pain
website down.
Sanjay like a Koya, such a good day, can't you?
You camera trees. I didn't tell you. Yes, I'm the jam.
Oh, that's Is that right? Can you hear me?
There's no light. Oh, okay.
So Lam Guru Rinpoche Topgyal Miso Miso Soni Tendrecheke Tenterkin Chokgyur Lingpa Sapter Lama Tratop Dorje Drakpo Tsal Lamrim Nyingpo ni Ma Hyoko Dri Tining Mantene Shokin Chinamba Tendre Sene Tofu Bonga Semtronga Jibonga Nitini Sina Teni Nyangdo Jekerida Hako Tokeri Dongato Tokeri Teni Sensavat Sawa Sayata Nangtra Jexam Sayata that Tendrisina so Tenga course on the Ritaron Kongtrol Mato Pinto Chira and Yokamari these are the Sen Lupo Dambato Chula City Titan Nico Sen Lupo Goyambo Maniti Samaya Siko then at any Tawa Yula Jekeri Yondi Kangta Yula Jetokeri then the Chin Bottom you get to do singers.
Good morning, all of my Dharma friends, both new and old friends, and both those of you who are here physically and those who are listening or watching on Zoom. I want to begin by thanking all of you for your participation and attendance, because the wheel of Dharma can only be turned when there are people to listen to it. So in fact, by participating in events like this, you are making it possible for these teachings to continue, and therefore for me to continue to offer them. This is an example of the universal fact that everything is interdependent. As for motivation, please generate the motivation that all beings throughout space must achieve perfect and permanent happiness. Therefore, they must achieve Buddhahood. It is therefore in order to bring that about that you intend to listen to and put into practice these teachings. Motivated by such bodhicitta, the Dhamma with which we are concerned here this weekend is the stages exposition of the stages of the path, called the Essence of Wisdom, which was taught by Guru Rinpoche in the 8th century and subsequently discovered or revealed by his mind emanation, the great treasure revealer Chokgyur Lingpa. And it forms a part of, or an accessory to, his Guru Dorje Drakpo Tsal cycle, which is one of the 4 cycles of Buddhasadhana that make up some of the 37 or 38 treasures of Chokgyur Lingpa. While listening to these teachings, please relax. Listen to them at ease and with enthusiasm. I say this because we have a long-standing, even beginningless, habit of fear and anxiety. And as we all know, this has never helped us. And it's not going to start helping us now. It's certainly not going to help us hear the Dharma. When we listen to Dharma in a relaxed way, at ease, it becomes natural, effortless for us to understand its true meaning and to give rise to experience and realization.
Tening also that rank Samaya concept of called Lamrim. Lamrim say that the Pachumani that coaching the Pachimon, Samaya Lamino Mato, to call the Chata, the Tonda Jake on Yamslin, Tobayana, Bekachim or Kakari Mason, Makini Tito leader, Mayo Japan, but the Pachimbo, Samaya to the Kakayimba, Rimason. Tamji Sanjay Song, Monda Jing on the Dana, the Chunyami Hako, Tom the Quality, Demons dates around Kakari Hakos, some of Danson and Jacob. That's a Henry Jagona, Zawani Jane, the Dombo, Yaga Loman, Jevela, the Jihor, the Jibani, Jeva de Samari. Then the dinner, don't do you did the hand metal, the Corazza Candela, Manjak Dal, the Mancala, Matambo Gini, for the Manjak Sanjay Churi, the lost Jabama, Repugre, Anoni, Yache, Machia, the Chehor, the Mother Majak, Mary Matamaka, Charco, the Anna treated the rules in the Jack on Yanni seat on the Denny. None Sanjay Chutin Yanni seat, Topgyal. That Taranga Caps of Sanga, ngaso sangha lami sangha tamche korhi ko le tamche se ya de ta dola songza mambo de ri sotar ke songza ma tikwa chimbo la sancho seng ke songza mambo de ri sangha la songza se ya de pe ya bo bao ko thap yong ba na songza de ha ko de pe ta sa sotar ina songza de ma go na sotar ke domba kan ri ki mi su se ka ko ma ri na sancho samba ina ya na ge ri sangha第三种啊，做跟的送上的写稿的那个编稿的，就是上海的他们他有的每个国家讲嘛的，上海这样的看着是看到，他通过呢我说帮忙啥子查查跟这我们的马家就把它送上的送过来，这马都就把它我说看样也有嘛的送上的，第一的送上这个多几人二能吃的吧那个，送脚包国产品吧那个。偏见不同过来，你妈这人的了，怎么说？他说你妈这一个看了啥就这些话去做过，是吧？这些怎么嘛子呢？曾经么都说的，这么都说啥的？但是你妈觉得可能个的他人的可能，就是谁跟谁么他妈那一差不多，但那个怎么说他们呢？这个把有真起来，或者把有真起后呢，三节就恐怕要是他们搞的。我说他们做我们家的三节，他把他。他把嘛是他们进去不恐慌的，没搞的哩。他们进去不恐慌的，没有让鸟的主他们，鸟那么多的地方，在那上面当高的，大龙啊，我说人包人肉不高，鸟那么多的地方，在长嘛高呢，把有真些大等着为那呢，送上的要不送的呢，送上的要不送，等你鸟的谁的呢？可能就多就跟着这鸟的上去，搞绿地这个多呢，个人节目高。상타도 다방카비오 케는 좀 로도 거라서나 대 송장도 소송 냠니도 소세네 되니 꿀리게라 자주도게 자주 포아친고 거니네 다방카비오 케는 당선 로도 거텔라 이 대라고 태정 자반이는 거 말이 태정 자반이는 뭐고 다 들리기 자가 될이 지시잖아 그나서 시토거든 로토거데 되나 자동 포친저 손이 망보 다른 적던 적게 말이 상하냐니 늘어지는 거거든 말도 이 말이 상하의 대지도 다다게 나서가 깔아한다 상하의 현대내다 달거든 대나기 등이 님만 간적구나 상하의 대안나기 달거든 대는 나서가 상하냐니서
We are concerned here with the section of the text which deals in general with the with correction, the removal of impediments, and which fundamentally is the correction of our practice. And here, since this text is on the stages of the path, deals with the entire path, starting with the beginnings of the Shravakayana and all the way up to and emphasizing Hatha Yoga. It occurs in the context of the assumed context of what we would call the higher reaches of the path, which are the highest levels of the Vajrayana or tantric practice. But at the same time as appreciating the context of this explanation that we're about to come to, which specifically deals with the Samaya or boundaries surrounding Vajrayana practice. We need to remember that all of the Buddha's teachings and all of Dharma really comes down to one point and has one purpose. So when we are looking at or focusing on the highest level of the Buddha's teachings, as we are at this point in our text, it is not that we are concerned with methods that contradict the basic message of Buddhism. It is rather that we are concerned with a greater level of precision about what that basic message was. It may therefore be helpful for you to understand the gradation of teachings here, not so much as an exchange or transformation of the message, but as a more and more precise focus on what that message always was. I mention this because here we are concerned with what may appear to be the restrictive aspect of Vajrayana practice. And while we think of the Buddha's teachings as perhaps being somewhat restrictive in terms of what we can do and not do in the beginning, we may have the misunderstanding that at some point there is no longer any restriction. There are no longer rules to be kept. And that's not true. There are rules. The difference is that the objects of restriction, as you'll see, and the ways of observing these rules, both restrictions and prescriptions, become more and more precise. So when we are concerned, as we are here, with the most precise level of the Buddha's teachings, we have to therefore take the most precise approach to such issues as meditative states, conduct or behavior, outlook, and so on. Because we are dealing with means of such precision, such sophistication, and therefore such power, we need armor. And the armor we wear as practitioners is our observation of these, we could say, rules. At the same time, we must admit, and it is traditionally acknowledged, that we are imperfect. Because we are imperfect, our mindfulness and alertness are necessarily imperfect. Because they are imperfect, our observation of these rules, as precise and demanding as they are, is necessarily going to be imperfect as well. So therefore, in addition to the rules or boundaries themselves, we definitely also need means of reestablishing them, means of purifying them, renewing them, and restoring them. And it is principally that with which we are concerned at this point in the text. Within the general section of correction, we are concerned with the correction of the obscuration or veils that happen to us when we fail to maintain proper boundaries. Now, this should not, Lama said, be regarded as a shock or a surprise. We all use dishes when we eat. And the process of using the dishes makes them dirty. We should not be idealistic and pretend that our dishes don't get dirty. Our dishes do get dirty. So we need some way to wash the dishes. If we never wash the dishes, if we pretend my dishes are clean, they don't get dirty, and we never wash them, they're going to get so dirty until they have to be thrown out because they can't be used anymore. Well, we cannot take that approach with our lives because we cannot throw ourselves out. We cannot throw ourselves into the garbage. On the other hand, if we do the dishes regularly, then even with our imperfections, even with our body minds as they are now, we can still, because of the precision and power of these teachings, achieve the celestial state, the state of the great transference, the state of a rainbow body in this life. And we can say this with 100% certainty. There is no doubt, because large number of people have, throughout recorded Buddhist history, achieved this. They are continuing to achieve it as we speak, and they will continue to achieve it in the future. But in order to achieve that, we require the assiduous implementation of these means of restoration.
Nyingpo Torha, Linchi Nying, Ya, Nying Dam, Nyam Dam Mundro, Nyam Sem Za, Nes Madu, Gosam Naka, Wow, the sort of big kitchen walk, take some gallery. Then the Dadema, Mary, German animal, they don't draw Japtima, the Mados, my Hugana. They all Sanhaja, Tamsen Yambe, Sender, Madu, Tamaji, Lam, Artaji. Dorje Drakpo Tsal or Sombe, K. Kent Cheve, K. Cherry, Ni, Kent Cheve said, Nyambe Nipa Tramo Samaya, Tema, Tat Hyayel, Lama Musam, Zasam Java Ramjam Yila, said, Sampo, Naben Torking, Juba Trapu, Yat, Linji Dedo, Majiba, Yingtabane, Dam, Sinji Soda Bajam Mazi. Danamit Sem Damja Song Chamik Song the Dinagi. They are Nipa Sana, the Nipa Garega Sang Quality. Sang Gori, the Sangyana, the Bacher, and Dikap so Morita Bonimaki, the Pasama, Yoji Chulu, Zombe, Jemperto, Roke, Mabepa, Mebito, Fiji, Mejito, the Hisong and the He, Mebepa, Drana, Memperican, Tom Drawas. Take a yak de Kongtrol Lodro Thaye. Then a Tom Nova Chungru Ravata, Ning Nongju Jana, Lela Rangi Madrabe, Dapper Manjara Mila, Ning Nongju Trabuko, Yago, Nazo de Chaton Donicas, Nongju Trabu, Ning Chas on that day. There's one Nongju Trabuko, Yago, Manjara Mebe, Yago Sor Topgyal Timbes. That categories in the Japa, Chasa de la Topgyal Tsango, Tata Tinja Topta, Nyingpo Contagion Topta, Tate Nagi, Sorchuba, Sinchi Mizipa, Tamja Domsen, Somata, the Sotama, the Goholi, Shazek, there's some control on so Chata Cheat Salary, Shazek, Yulong and Yunga Kano, Yulong Mingan and Yunga Kano, Yula, Chanter, Yadam Sasi. Chart the Yago, that the Basaya, the Soso Hakor, Making Hakomari, Naja Tanse, Nitape, Yin Yander, Rangupes, Sangha Tanseria, the Nitabari, Sotal and Rakamari, Sansan and Rakamari, Sangha Tanse, the Nitaba, Sangha the Care Chevaro, Nubachimori, then the Yanika Nubachimori, or Nuba Yander, Rangubi, Ne Upesena, Tanse Yamba Mata, Lombaji, the Chola Tom or Sombe. Damyanda, Naked Dubaso, Hindisum Mandroken, Nyambe Joda Sonata, Lakater, Kazeta and some ronson, Secam say some ronson. Damya Musu Yubenes, Tajes, Damya, so Damya Musu Yube, Sanet and Taji, Magua Tatarite. Jishot Samya, did Dijike, Lord Davan, that's the short and Romanis, Medujan, Dorna Gosum, Luma, Yisum, Gosum, Payuda. Jinhike Saratana, Saravasaya, the Jinhike Sarava, Timba, Sarata, Chicken, Timba Goata, Chicken Saravata, Sonro, then I get Tana, Natawa, Savo, Di tamsek seyate, ngone tane ke jana so chungchong chamo tsam mai batan di tamsek seyate sangha la lokta seyata. So ke tsabal lama, ngone ka drinking je tsabal lama. Dendal hopon, dorje hopon, dendal jinje tsiding ko nyamni si to ki sangha nyamni si to ke so la lokta jinki ke mate da lokta jinki na so ke lokta jinki na de lokta jinki ke mai na Telam Rosum, that is on the Chungchomar, that then the Sankolri,
such a chi issue,
such a
issue conscious the dancing Nyingpo said the Dambo Wong dancing shoot Sunday.
There you
are. Didn't they Kongtrol not serving?
This
Lama Chikpa, Chokwa Chikpa, it's up dancing Nyingpo say Kepena Yeshe Gyamtso. That's okay, Kisha.
That's okay, Jamari.
There's such a lot of Chuluk.
Jabin the Kunga, the Hija Jabin, the Chicken, Tata Hakotas, them, Titoni, the Key, the Hato, Gogo, Mado, Demawala, Tamatam Senyan, Tamse Chanya, Josea, O Mari, Tamse Johnson, or Taylor, say at the O Mari, so Dorje Drakpo, only one Jamne Vega, Sanghak, Tamse Taylor. The Sonza de Sapo Hako, the Kare Hako Golisina. Ngaso Sangha Nyamni Sayate, Wambo Nombo and the Horo, Wambo Nombo and the Sonza de Gandu with Songom, Gandu the Songjuri, the Gandu the Songom, Sanjaka Songa Lela, Jeja Vega Lela, Group of one the Tangal, new, Group of one the country, Jeja the Gentem the country, Group of one the Sena country, so the Sarpo, Juyong Menga, Tambino, Dan Hako, Sondo, the Ruby, the Jonda Sosoka. Lunga is some tackle is Yapo Sangha Yamnis in the Gomya data, Kitchen Bodida, Manchek, the Sangha Tamsing Yam, Yamyala, Kable, Yamdo, the Sami, Kable, Topa, Shara, Go Marita, Charata, Dom Maromba, Dom Maromba, Nasa, Dom, the Jobs and the Send check, Resum, the Sangha Tamsi Saya Della, Tessa, Trago Mari, then at the Sunza, there's a kid again, that are only Kipana. Take a some jobs in the social pink or what that.
So you're going to need some context for what's coming to it. We're going to carefully explain what it means and what it doesn't mean, because there's some assumption and context here. First of all, we're talking about the actual practice of confession. And the practices referred to here, because this text is overall a text about practice. The practices we're talking about here are both private and communal. The private practices include any form of confession or purification practice you do on a daily or regular basis, which as a Vajrayana practitioner, of course, you are bound to do. But as you'll see as we go through this section, we're principally talking about communal acts of confession. And among those, principally we're talking about the types of confession practice that we do here on a yearly basis during the 5 days of subtle essence Vajrasattva practice. That is to say, the practice is connected with the peaceful and lawful deities. And as we go through the text, you should be able, if you remember those practices, to make the connections. And even if you can't make them now, if you go back and look at those texts, you'll see how this relates. First of all, the type of Samaya boundary that is being talked about here is what's called Samaya contagion or Samaya corruption. Now, Samaya corruption, and last time we ended with an explanation of the signs of having been contaminated by Samaya contagion. Samaya corruption can be internal. You can corrupt your Samaya without any interaction with anybody else, simply through your own thoughts, as has been described in previous weekends. Here, it's specifically talking about contagion. And the previous section went through the signs of contagion, and now we're going to go through the means of purifying, of confessing and purifying that contagion. And there are two sections to this, a general statement and then the particulars in Guru Rinpoche's text. So first of all, what he says, and we'll provide context as we go through this, because without context, this could be seriously misunderstood. Oh yeah. Guru Rinpoche says, as most of these problems in meditation, not all meditation problems, but the ones you described last time, come from impairment of Samaya. Always reveal and confess such impairments and bind yourself within your heart, never to engage in them or subject yourself to them henceforward. Do not keep company with those whose Samaya has been impaired. Do not eat food made by or shared with those who have impaired their Samaya. Do not remain in places where those with impaired Samaya reside or have ever resided. And allowing your three gates, your body, speech, and mind, to settle naturally. Now, as said, this requires a great deal of context. First of all, when we talk about Samaya impairment here, we're talking about when it says stay away from those who have impaired Samaya, it doesn't mean people who don't say their daily mantras or don't do enough practice or are quarrelsome or anything like that. The type of Samaya impairment in others that we have to be aware of, and that's what is focused on in this section, is when someone has received full empowerment from the same teacher as yourself. Whether they have received, it's most serious if they've received the same empowerment from the same teacher, and it's even more serious if they receive the same empowerment from the same teacher at the same time, because then they're called your Samaya twin, as you're born together. But in any case, no one can impair or break Samaya without having received it. Samaya is a vow that has to be taken. So this is not saying avoid people you regard as disreputable in general. This does not mean avoid adherents of other spiritual traditions. Does not mean avoid those who adhere to no spiritual tradition. Does not mean avoid those with whom you disagree about other mundane matters. It means, however, that you do have to avoid, if you're going to be a Vajrayana practitioner, the company, influence of those who, having undertaken the same Samaya as yourself, have subsequently broken it, long said, in a fundamental way. A fundamental way means either that they have turned against the Vajrayana teachings, including those that they received together with you entirely, and repudiated them sincerely. Not in the sense of having a minor hissy fit. We all have hissy fits. But in the sense of coming to a decided decision, a resolution. I am no longer a Vajrayana practitioner. I think the Vajrayana teachings are bogus. That kind of thing. That's one way. The other way is when they have repudiated your guru. If they never had anything to do with your guru to begin with, this is not an issue. But if they were your guru's disciple, as you are, and someone said they're your guru's Vajra brother, you must suspend all contact with them. Now, there is even an exception to this. If they're mentally ill, according to the Buddha's basic rules for all the vows he imposed, if someone is really mentally ill, then they haven't broken a vow because they're not capable of it. So they have to be of relatively sound mind. But this doesn't exclude being motivated by kleshas. Their antipathy to your guru could come from, let's say, competitiveness or patronage or something like that. Just theoretically, I'm just talking hypothetically here. But in such cases, that person becomes a source of contamination for you. And any contact, even indirect, will make you mentally sick, will harm your practice in the ways that were described last weekend. And this is real. This is not superstition. This is not something that can be dismissed as a cultural thing. So to go through the commentary now on this. When someone breaks Samaya, because the Vajrayana is so powerful, because it's so fast, all sorts of bad things happen. Just as if you're on a very fast train and it goes off the tracks, it's not going to be pretty, right? When someone breaks Samaya, whether through their own actions or thoughts, or through contact with another person who has seriously broken it, in this life, all kinds of unpleasant things will happen. Not may happen, will happen. Worse, their path will be blocked. Further progress on the path will not occur. They'll come to a stop. After this life, if this is not purified within a reasonable period of time, they will not experience the bhakti. they will go straight to hell. And a hell that you can only go to if you've taken Samaya vows. It's called Vajra hell. Ordinary people cannot go to this hell. It's worse than the hell that any ordinary sinner can go to. Vajra hell is a whole different level of torment and duration. So understand, Jamgon Lodro Thaye writes, and Lama reiterated, that the Vajrayana teachings are dangerous. Just as driving a car is more dangerous than walking, right? Taking an airplane is more dangerous than driving a car, right? So in the same way, the Vajrayana teachings are dangerous because they're fast, they're powerful, they're effective. Anything that can do you tremendous good, in the case of the Vajrayana, bring you to the state of perfect Buddhahood in one lifetime, is all automatically very, very dangerous. It must be. That's just the way things are. Therefore, as Lama said, the vows of the Vajrayana are much stricter. And the penalties, not imposed penalties like legal consequences, but natural, automatic penalties for breaking those vows are much, much worse than those of monks' vows, nuns' vows, or the Bodhisattva vow. We generally think that monks and nuns have tough vows, but if we don't take those vows, we can do whatever we want. And bodhisattvas, people who take the bodhisattva vow, well, they have to kind of be good people, but aside from that, they can do whatever they want. And people who practice Vajrayana don't even have to be good people, they can do whatever they want. But it's actually the opposite of that. It is the opposite of that. Why? A monk or nun does not break their vows without a physical or verbal, mostly physical, action on their part. Their thinking cannot break their vow. The company they keep cannot break their vows. Okay? A bodhisattva, by which I don't mean Chenbazi, I mean us, people who have taken the bodhisattva vow, has to be even more careful than that, because the bodhisattva vow can be broken by thinking, by mentally abandoning a sentient being, in addition to what we do with our bodies and our speech. And the Vajrayana vows, which must incorporate some form of personal liberation vow, whether monastic or lay, and the Bodhisattva vow. The Vajrayana vows, the Samaya vows, are even stricter than that, because they are broken not only by actions of body and speech, indeed they are, not only like the Pratimoksha, not only by thought, like the Bodhisattva vow, they are, but the Vajrayana vows can be broken by association, unlike the others. A Bodhisattva cannot break their Bodhisattva vow by keeping the wrong company, but a Vajrayana practitioner can. So therefore, we have to be constantly on our guard. And this is especially true. It's not, in one sense, it's easier here because there are fewer Vajrayana practitioners. In this regard, you don't have to beware of civilians. Civilians are fine. It's other Vajrayana practitioners, frankly, you have to beware of, because they're the ones who may have broken Samaya. And so the way to, so that's what you're watching out here for here. Now what to do about it? As with any infraction of any Buddhist vow, the sooner you fix it, the better. As time passes, infractions grow. They reinforce themselves, even without any action or thought on your part. So as soon as you realize that you have corrupted or contaminated your Samaya through contact with a Samaya breaker, if you can, go immediately to the physical presence of the Guru or Lama with whom Samaya has been broken. If they're still alive, and if you can actually tell them this and admit this to them, that's the best thing. Because then you will know that you cleared it at the source and at the root. If you can't do that, for whatever reason, because they have passed away or for whatever other reason, then immediately, as soon as you become aware that the contamination has occurred, invite all of the deities of the 3 jewels and 3 roots into the sky before you, and fully reveal, either using the liturgy, as we do in communal practice, as will be discussed in a few minutes, or even in your own words, describe the situation and admit it. Now, for this to work, as with any act of confession, 4 elements must be present. If any of the 4 elements are not present, it will not work. In addition to revealing the contamination to the witness, the support, which is the first power, whether it's the physical presence of your guru or the imagined presence of the 3 jewels and 3 roots. The first of the 4 elements is that there be a witness, that there be that support. And it's allowed to imagine the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in this regard, because although we're imagining them, they're not imagining us. We don't see them, but they do see us. They do hear us. The second element that is essential is regret. You have to care. If your attitude is, well, they say it's not good to, hang out with people who did such and such, and so on. But I don't really believe it. Maybe just in case. That's not going to work. You have to really regret it. The third element is you must promise never to do it again. Now, if you sort of promise, like you think, well, I'll try and avoid them, but, we go to the same store, we go to the same, you have to unconditionally promise. And the fourth element is you have to do something good to counteract the momentum of that. So you have to take, it doesn't mean just do your regular good deeds and practice. It means you have to do something additional. A good deed, whether it's generosity or reciting mantras or meditation on emptiness. It doesn't matter what it is, but you have to do something with the specific dedication of that act to repairing that thing. People say they do these purification practices and they don't get purified, and they say, why? I did this and I did that. You didn't do any of it, if I may say so, because you didn't focus. Remedial action is only a remedy if it's focused as a remedy. You have to focus, you have to be precise. And first and foremost among these is confession. Because as a general rule, when we conceal something, it grows. It becomes more powerful. This is why we're taught to conceal our virtues and reveal our faults. When you reveal your virtues, you weaken or destroy them. They get reduced to performance. In the same way, when you reveal your faults, the things you've done wrong, including here, the Samaya violation, you deprive that seed of wrongdoing of what are called the manure and moisture of deception. Deception need not be active deception. Deception in the Vajrayana case and also in the case of the Pratimoksha, the Bodhisattva vow, is not only I didn't do it when you did, it is simply not mentioning that you did. So, as soon as you can, confess it with the 4 powers. The good news is that actions, and therefore the imprints of actions, do not exist, really. They only seem to. That's why they can be purified. If actions and the imprint of actions had true or inherent existence, purification would be impossible. Nevertheless, because they seem to exist, they can seem to cast us into Vajra hell, where we can seem to suffer immeasurably for potentially infinite time. And while none of this is real, it is as real as this. This only seems to be real, it is not real. So if this is real for you, that is real. This is not a story, this is not a cultural thing. You know, don't. In the Vajrayana context, we use the confession liturgies that come from the Mahayoga Tantras and the Anuyoga Agamas, principally. So, as we'll see in a few minutes, the confession liturgies we use, such as the inexpressible confession that we use both during the Sadhasana Bodhisattva practice and during the Dzogchen intensives, these all come from the Tantras and Agamas. And although when we practice in community, we pile them up. We use one and another and a third one and so on, because the emphasis in communal practice is amount of liturgy. In personal practice, you can use any one of them, as long as it includes the Vajrayana confession. So understand the key point here, which is that because the Vajrayana Samaya is so strict, the Bodhisattva vow is stricter than the Pratimoksha vows. And the Vajrayana Samaya is stricter than the Bodhisattva vow, and includes it. Because the Vajrayana Samaya is so strict, You can break Samaya through association. You cannot break Pratimoksha or the Bodhicitta vow, Bodhisattva vow, merely through association. You can break Vajrayana Samaya through association. So how do you avoid this? First of all, what is the, how far away do you have to stay from someone who's broken Samaya? The basic rule is you must not share a water source with them. And this is taken seriously. Great masters have refused donations of excellent parcels of land because they bordered a river that was connected to a distant place on the same river where Samaya had been broken with one of their teachers. I'm not going to name names here, but I could. So this is real. This is a concern. So don't, in other words, I'm not going to name the names of those great masters who have been that meticulous, but I could. So that's the basic starting point, is you must not drink water and therefore food and all the other things that comes from a water source used by anyone who has broken Samaya with your root world. That's first. Then other obvious things like you cannot live in the same community with someone who has broken Samaya with your root world. But actually, that means even if they moved away, if they ever lived there, the as they say, the earth is poison. Above all, you must not share food with someone who has broken Samaya with a guru. And don't ever settle in a place, building, in which someone who broke Samaya with your root guru ever lived. Jamgon Lodro Thaye says, not only if they're still living there, but if they ever lived there. So in other words, he concludes this section saying, you have to be extremely careful about this with your body, speech, and mind. And he says, you have to allow your body, speech, and mind to remain natural and free and unrestricted within the context or the safety of these boundaries.
Number some go here. Number some go Reje Hyapatan, Songe Konga, Hyapak and Drever Karimba, the something. The Nani Tambo Rigi Hyapate, he in the Kapsota, say Nani, some father. Lapan Yam, Hya Kongichuane, Lama Yata Kando Kananga, Drevet Junker Champion, Chu, So, Zhang, Ding Zeng, Sar, Di, Debe, Tudanko, So, Di, Jin, Zhang. Kube Santo Dorje Drakpo Tsal Santo Dava Ngaya Tomo Nipa Toro to Sata Tipa Latine here that day not so good Jonda Shotota Dorsem Shototan Dravaco Chimboyo then the Data Lama Consom Diana Giri that then Dravayo Bating Atoma Yoni Lamp or the Rumbayan then the thing I took to Jonda to so Goya the Tok Kanga the Goya the Jimsi the Lepo and as a young Tipian on the Kapta Tok Kanga the Shaban on the Kapta Jimsi Sanga Teni Jonda Narakan Jota 다 된다 이식금 조망아서 논도 거데 된다의 진짜 샤바라 름바 망본동 거저 전내샤다 다불동 야라서 버터서 그바 김치데 마 름지시 거데 다다서 가서 주가나 나오데 가서 그 로다 다바 동도 거데 조기 갑서이나 도르생 갑서이나 데나 로타바 그 체크 마리 가촌저이나 마 랑다 차요구나 이식금 조마데 강다량 망체큐데라 교거요 말에 가서 상하게 냠니싱기 참하게 이식금 조마데 대안하게 dorje samba 대안 마히나야다 강다량 동담 좀 유는데 받치기야 되다 동도 dorsen 샤바 동야도 주고 말에 다게 또 망고 지나서 농거리 남나 지나서는 득금 망자 레바나 콩가 말에 나 나랑 된 동그 유지기에 거래 나도 망자로 줘 말아 저출은 거래 다고 현절이 마동아 랜드 기사고 줘 말이다 저출은 거래 지나서 콜로가 내가 배속친 거래 디바로 된 갑래 커버를 마고 동고라나 갑래 커버를 너무 무거워 돈이 담체 마냐마 연도 지시된 뭐 성득이나 된 동고 나라는 뭐게 잡아 보기 거래 라마에서 다 강다야 도르제도 왕암데 갱행존 왕만 못 걸고 이 나라나 남도 망고 다다 상하가 공리해봐나게 남도 같이 요바다 상하가 송사데 간다 거래 데 소탈다 상sem이가 드라마 남도는 대바 그 상하가 추르기 거래 대련 간나 상하가 추데 소된 상하가 추데 벨레라워를 기억하다 nga 바에 자나서 자하리나 기만본 nga 바리 가르스는 줘 nga 치디서야 돼 들으게 말이다 너 산지 긴라왔다 오늘 nga 치디서야 돼 송자 나로는 번결 잡았어 말 다달람에 공소만 하기를 잡아다 능악 송자마도 말이 답대요 산생라 대요 말이 남도게 레가를 내고 상한 남도는 내도 레가를 내고 버려 데텔 가래 커버리다가 남도 매와서야 되라 빼 가래 커버 된도 상하대 송자대 많고들이라 샤바데 대서빈들이 야보네 저는 무슨가 단체 냠로 미시나 남도 써야 되라 뭐네 잔에 좀 컴바나 쪽이야 로레다 남도 되라 빼 레사고 somtava then the tsare namto te zangi jinchor rikona del tsare nipan yong da ko de la jinchi tembo moni ko da te je kon ki pare te ni pa ro ji ni pa da te jeran do gongban do ba le da ze da da pa tingin zen de khona ni jo kongwa ngara so pe 총 만족이 유노 맹안한다 사파를 나ppe 냠차차긴 공부 좋아 sabjen 자체와 송반남지 양균 제거들은 내 손이 힘 거래 단도 공부도 봐서야 돼 상한 닝마게 나유 대성가 나니 주고 저도 나유 대성가 나니 용들이 대한나기가 다다 고고 가르조고 다다 도주 생성님아 내때나는 도고 봐도 봐. 너 공부도 봤어야 돼. 아는 요가 나 지켜리도. 아는 요가 나 지켜리. 다들 지나 봐. 갈래갈래 배로세는 야보는 데는 향방을 얘기한다. 유된다는 송기는 동바 건데서 보게. 마송게. 코담을 끼나 송게. 등지게 건 도래리. 산도 도르지라서 봐. 데니 뒤가서 산도 도르지가 도완제는 뒤지니 동바 혁자 타바 내카라 랑딩야 되 추레리 동바 혁자 타바 내네 로파자 니혀자 땡기 지서 데네 르마라에 제모네 상한도 산도르지가 동바 충고고 내카슬라 르키 자마만 송 르키 자마 나이 나니 마초 다다 스모 오디 타비 서야 되게 가이 도한제네 나게에서 대자시게 리게 추르 상한님마 상게 동다 조직 세거든 다데 디나는 송야가 추를 리도들이 좀 해거든.
Kongtrol tapa lagiores, geronzo gozars. Dene Kongtrol gomatas, de carbo white book, de tamano walk, de chunzo de carbo na mayor, de carbo Tanya is dinner, or Tanya, take more Tanya, shaggy ears, or shaggy ears. Reason Komara that the Topgyal Lodro Thaye, Ego Manyo.
Tenderido. That did.
Take that need that the chicken zone.
Chick take him down to the night.
The concept is
That day got to do when the Teddy on that day he got them substitute judge or someone young is Lama yet. That's all the not so Sangha Lama say at the Zosi. Lama say at the only Zosi go, the Sangha Yami Sena Lama Zosi. Lama Kipolamato, Lama Kipok record. Lama say at the Samno town, the Charans of Lama der Debajo down the Lama Nyamton Royat, Yawaki Halls. Garis, Lama the Nyamro said, Lama to the maze of the Trunus on the Gomez, Lama Labis on Natsoko, Kiko. Lama Tratop on Natsoke, Lucky Mari. Garis, Lama Tratop on Kajila, Tata and Natotore, Not Trigger. Channels of the Teranga and Tijini, you may Hakoma. Not the Leo program Bredina. Na Yonka Yenzen, Na Yonka Yumi Hako. Channels of the Loda Jacare, or Comungo Canados, Cocanaris. Tendry Secret, Samuel and Debari, Lama Trigate of Odinsia. And a Lama say the Tujon Rodicato, Lama Gunju, Topa Channels of Linto kitchen. Lama Kuna, the channels of Jonas. Lama Suri than the Kuna, Lama Kuna Yapo, Timango Yori, Lama Kuna Rana, Ranaki, Mango Yori. Lama the Gunju Toba the current, only the so Gunju Toba the Yamin Karsamba, Tata Tenda Nangu, Desum, the Tena Saha Lami, the Zoba Chimbo, even Motu Janica, Lama de la Candado, Lama de Juba Samo Candado. Di Tawa the Gunju, the Salito, Tuna Sondola, Deo. Lama Juba the Chigika, Lobjanzo and Chivita, Mamma. Lama Juba the Lobjanzo, Talan Romari, the Tatarnas. Lama Mambo Juba Zimboji, Yori, Cherry or the Lama Juba. Lama Juba de la Santonima, Lama Gunju de Toba de la Santa. Daily Taki, then the Lama de Tori, Lama Yadan Karo Zawa, some kicked in the palm, so Kano, Japan Tatangaso, Dorje Rinpoche, Tatangaso, Lotaba, Nima Narangada, Dorsem Kort, Tika, the Kama Jazata. Kamada, Mani Jazata, Cuba Jazata, Yarze Jazata, Mira Jazala, Sopa Kantam, Sad on the Zete, the new Gazoka and so called the vacation body. Yondara champion, so Yondara champion, Sanagan Chuba Jazata, Soji Yozi, Kanjo, Zanga, Zipat, Tramla, Zanga, Gana, Soso, Zondoka, Zangigan Zondo, Zanzogan Zondo, Mother de Parto. Zamasiko Chuba, Zangi Zamun Chuba Jansi. They Tartana, the Gomari, Yomo Tonga Pango Mari, one electri, Tonga Pango Mari, Panza Yomotonga, the Pango Mari. Pango Jade Tao, Pango Madas Yomun for you, Sea Yomari, Caresina, Naran Peli Yortin, that's how you, any Pango Mari is all limited. Naran Yomono, you get the Pango Marizena, Yansan, Garason Zipatala, Dandon thing in the Sark, Tempa, Trondo Mcbe, Zerzam. Zabia Deva, Manja Tuki, Tamja Nyingpo, Tudan Lama Dungeon Lama Tawas and Jazza, Jin, Tudan Chuban Bor, Dog, Romo Si, Tepatana Yichik Goni, then the Lama Jin, the Lama Tawas, Nyingpo, so Petit, Young Korva, Yan Don, Tapia, Nanka Chunga Jin, Nanka, Savia Pananda, Nanka, Tayo Mari, Dena, Tame, but Lama Bottom, but the Jin, Kama Sanda. Look Goni, then Lusala Deba Jansazo, Mazo Jansansaya della Jangjavana, Lusala Dem Sargo, then Mazoga, Lusala, Chaso Debo, and Demi Marino, Kambachani Kayori, Lapachani Kayori, Dedeon, Chanasa Tata, Dr. Lam, Dr. Yomari, Sani Kambacha, Lapachana Lamet, Lukiz, and Angala, Mikin, Pona Kalekabori, Chesom Pinkan and Rolamina, Tokis, Nakambacha, Dena, things are you don't know, Lela Makorwa. Galekawari, they say you must Lugubong and in Samsa, Lugasal, Depe, Jansata, Nazo San, they go already, Nazon Chan Yankee or Marin, Chantoki or Mari, Elang Sala, Della Drinsato, Pumoton Sansaya della, Kantaya San Salona Banioli, Jansata, Drinsani, Zona Drinsan, Jumi, Donji Kapada, Java Katoram, see you, Sinazoka, Dorsen Donica, the Java Katoram, see you. Can't get the man don't go to the Kamata, one in them for the Kamashapati man don't do that. Say, God, Naga go and Yamcha Jong, Lincoln, Jeko, Jomdi Dorje Samba, Recta, Rected in the Dorje Samba, and also Tutaba, some Hadi Yamni sing here in the Dorje Samba and Darame, but some of the time, Ye Java, the Yamad regular Lona, then Pinko leads on the day, Jomdi Dorje Samba, Rected in the Pahajek, Rected in the Lama Dorje Samba. Dorje Samba, the Zawa Lama Yeneba, yes, or Lama. Number Dorje Samba, Lama told the Dorje Samba told the Yawa Mari. Lama ran say Yemi, Lama Lata, Yemi say at the day. Lama ran say Yemi, Lama Lata, Yemi Ritatu, Simjin the Sanjinila, told the Chepa Mewareke, Chanazo Hakonia, D Hako, the Ninger Zumiri, your gain, your D Ninge della, Tata Nam Dog G, the Ninja Gomini Kakari, D Kapsata Ninge Zumiri Tonkola, D Ninge. Tony Ding or Hinge, Ding Hinge Yanta Parella, then the Gonde Samaya, Sanga, Rambadam, Sa, Roata, Savata, Runta Neka, Natsoke, Zoki, Capso, Runta Neka, Jimmy Donji Kapata, Tabalon Casson, don't call the dead, Neka, and so the Nema Goni, Kapitsiki, Kesan Tombo, Kesan Yaki, Cheboja. Another key to Jaro Miro, singer of Tamji Jaco, Lomado the key to Majaro, the Karen and Mambo Lape, Lomado the key Jaco, key to Mambo Lape, the Dodo. Wakoya la Jimmy, the Kachi, ye lots of Sari Sambino, Kaga. Mondo Hido, Tomoma, then Karen don't go hamo. Get some Tombo and Nova, then Nagadra, Java take the Jew. Nenga Gone, Java, get some Tombo you. Yijagone, the Pekagan, annual chocolate, Lava Ladam chocolate, Kessan Tombo, Mugga Gorimato, Kessan Tombo, Mugga Goro, Maria. Nacho put it in Mugga Goma, Yijagone, double on judges, double on judges at the Pay of tomorrow, the dinner, one as on the water to Kinka. Double on judges start up for some Yonda, and then Solome, Kata chapter chimpanga, Yambari Yason. That go to me Donji Kapari, to me Donji Kata, Chapter Chimbokanga, the Yambariana, Ekaza Kaza Kazi, Kanza Kanzi, Yomari, Kanza Kanzi, the Kaza Kazi, our Tomborita, the Kangoma, Yagoma, Kanga Mugo, Tony Kapasi, the Yambaria, Tomon the Kika, Eugene goes, Tomon the Jatang, the Kika, Eugene. Go some Niba Chichipa, no you drop on the Chapato Yapa South, Chipa Chenu Mari, you don't do the son, don't Chapa Saint General, Ganyan, the Rakapa, you read the Coder, has fortune to carry, sort you the Yaporo. Not so do you the Tamdra Posea, Hako Tokari, only Hako Tokari, Lama Chimbo Tamgi, the Nato, Magari Child and Rodu, now I keep all the same Tango, same Zama, Hal Lepake. Get Mambo Machine, send the pay, Jiboda. I not teach all the Yanjan Rogo, teach all the Yanjas on the Jibondo son, Nima Reni, the Jumatabaki, Jibori. The so only Tamsik Zama, Tamsik Zama. Gareniam the Rona Keja Kajaki, suddenly, Naranga Keja him, he get on the low lorry. So now that Kandoan the woman he get low lorry in the Tamdrop. He got so the Japako, Tamdrop on the mother, then must do just on the tongue to marry. Nazo della tesa zonto go ma changwa della derking nimbo yori derking nimbo della nazo ge gorda gori tesa drip yori tege limato de sanjo ge sen domba lang garni mari simji yudang ge domba de simji thamji lang ngarang ge nam ge sangha ge chunggo ko ne sanji ji kompa la gu ge samne ko lo tap de gori de di lo to go de nekap di gupo wang ge tesa tndre ge la zok Ni Narana Pinkari, Narana Pinkari, Korantola Pinkari, Nikala Pins Pinkari Mato, Young de Tokari, some Nimba Sana, Pet Tokari, Marabri, and then Narana Chewang, Mewang Sana, dancing the Desi, Mari, the other talking about Saos, the other Luna is on the Goson, Tomonga, Nika, Nibo Sozo, and Driver, Long Chin Rambo, the Jew, Jimmy Kapa, the Taban, don't go and also. Naso ran sangan yamni se dom tamjena Jimmy Kaju de Nyanga Sipia data, Domcha Rinanda, Jona de Jimmy Kaju, the Sakapa de Tabalong Jata, Rotan Nejata, Tatari, Yishikam Choma in Donko and Donko, Jimmy Kaju, Javo Sole, Chitangape, Yaki, Rugia, Savati Deli, Jarda Sangha Nyingma was a big hook body, the Sangha Nyingma was a hook on God, and also that I choose a Nyingma and their God. Jardan Sanya Chutamji, the Chepar Yomari, and also that never check Sangha Nyingma Chutil or do Dina the Keko makes a Sarah Gondon no.
So the preceding section basically described what we need, how we need to avoid Samaya corruption, and how, when it occurs, we need to confess it. The next section, the second section, deals with the specifics of the types of confession and purification practices that we use. And this amounts to a description, actually by name, of the confession liturgies that we use. For example, here, we use most of them during the Secret Essence Vajrasattva week, which centers around the beginning of April and the anniversary of Rinpoche's Parinirvana. And we use others of them, as you'll recognize if you're a participant in that program, but during the 10-day Dzogchen retreat programs that we have here yearly. So now we are moving from the general point to the specifics of what we actually use. And what is being presented here is really the reason why we do these things. And this is especially important because in general, when we think about the act of confession, we think, okay, so I confess. What's the big deal? Why do we have so many different confession liturgies? Well, we have different styles of confession because they correspond to different styles of things that needed to be purified. Now, there may be an issue with this English word confession. The Tibetan word shakpa. Shakpa is, it means to cleave. So, for example, when you hit something when you strike something with the blade of an axe and you chop it into two, that is cleaving. So it means, it has the connotation of separating yourself from something that is afflicting you, getting cleaned up, getting clear of something that is afflicting you. But to do that, you first have to recognize it and acknowledge it. Now, Lama interspersed his comments, which were extensive, with the text. For the sake of ease and convenience and clarity, I'm going to give most of his comments first, and then we'll get to both the root text and the commentary. One of the issues that will come up here, he said, for many of you, is the redundancy of liturgy. The idea that if confession is good, we should do it in more than one way. And the idea of redundancy here is not redundancy for the sake of redundancy. It's the same idea that you have with redundant technology, where when something doesn't work or breaks down, you don't die because there's a backup. So the idea here, while there is certainly crossover among the many confession liturgies and practices that we do, The redundancy is so that even if, let's say, you're distracted during one moment, you won't be during another moment, and it will penetrate, it will get to you. And then he said, nevertheless, I know that you all, by which he means those of you who speak to him privately, have great resistance to liturgical redundancy. You say to me, it's too much. I can't do it. It's too much to chant. It takes too long. And it is true, he said, that I have plenty of time to chant all these liturgies. In a sense, I could say that all I have to do really is purify myself and wait for death for the rest of my life. Whereas you have a great deal of, and I use the term samsara activity that you have chosen to engage in. You are not free to chant as much as I am because of the choices you've made. You have chosen to pursue various occupations and activities that take up a great deal of time. And that's just the way it is. Another issue that comes up for many of you in this connection is, why are there so many rules? Vajrayana is supposed to be about freedom, effortlessness, spontaneous perfection, easy attainment. It's supposed to be easier than this. Why are you, they say to me, making it so hard for us? Why are you making it so difficult? Why are you making it so complicated? Basically, the objection is, so the first objection is, you give us too much to chant. Second objection is, why are there so many rules? Well, you're correct, and it's a reasonable question, he said, because Vajrayana is about spontaneous perfection. But that is why there are so many rules. Vajrayana, to be precise, is about the transcendence of thought, the transcendence of thinking. As long as we have so many thoughts, we need so many rules. You seem to think that because you have so many thoughts, you should have fewer rules. A concession should be made. It should be softer on you. It doesn't work that way. Not if you want this to actually work. If you have more thoughts, you need more rules. And you'll need more and more and more and more and more rules the more thoughts you come up with, until you have no more thoughts. Then you won't need any rules. You won't need any confession. The third thing that many of you seem to think is that it's hard to be a monk or a nun because there are real rules, things you can't do. And that's true. There are things monks and nuns cannot do if they want to remain monks and nuns. But you think it's very easy to be a tantrika. I'm a tantrika, you say. I don't have to keep any rules. Well, let's consider that. If by tantrika we mean great, authentic tantrikas, successful tantrikas, like Nupchen Sanche Yeshe, he felt he had to keep a lot of rules, and he kept those rules. They may not be the rules that you would like to keep. They may not be the rules that conform with your politically correct expectations. but they were rules, and he kept them, and he was successful. So get rid of forever the idea you have that being a tantrika means you don't have rules to keep. You have more rules. As long as you have thoughts, you have rules. Okay, and then the next thing came in a certain place, so I'm going to save that. I'm trying to save that for them. All right. In terms of the techniques of purification we use to purify Samaya, there are two main practices. And this will be very useful for you to understand, because we do these practices on every 10th and 25th day when we do feast practice. And we devote ourselves to these practices for the 5 days in April of subtle essence Vajrasattva. So if you don't understand this, you don't understand what you're doing for those 5 days. And you don't understand what you're doing if you come on the 10th and 25th days. The first is confession, which in the Nyingpo tradition is of 4 varieties, which we'll go through. Second is fulfillment, which is sometimes called 4 couples or 4 pairs. But basically, you can think of it as also of 4 varieties. And then finally, what will be explained is the fruition, the result of confession or purification. So the first of these is this. In particular, engage in the ritual of confession and fulfillment of impaired Samaya. Set up the accomplishment mandala of the Guru, Yudam, or Dakini as appropriate, and set forth offerings and a feast. With clear and stable samadhi, engage in mantra repetition and appeal to the Samaya of the deities. Invite the recipients of the feast, prostrate to them with devotion. Perform the meditation and mantra repetition of Vajrasattva, and clearly and with a loud voice, recite what's called desperate confession, or the wailing confession. Rest in the view, and also, along with that, reveal common wrongdoing as well. So in other words, anything else you've done wrong is not specifically a Samaya violation. The Tantras, Agamas, and Upadeshas of the Nyingpo tradition emphasize, because there is an even greater emphasis on Samaya in the Nyingpo tradition, there is an even greater emphasis on purification. Therefore, the Tantras, Agamas, and Upadeshas of the Nyingma, the tradition, speak a great deal about confession and fulfillment. One of the principal sources for this, and this is very much connected with our secret essence of Padmasambhava practice, is a text that's called the General Sutra, the Wisdom Assembly, or the Assembly of the Wisdom of all Buddhas. Now, it's called a sutra even though it's a tantra because of the story of its origin. As Lama said, this was taught first in Akanishta by the Dharmakaya Samantabhadra, then, as predicted by Buddha Shakyamuni 28 years subsequent to his parinirvana, it was again taught by the Bodhisattva Vajrapani, who bore the name on that occasion, Vajradharma, to the five nobles, human, a Rakshasa, a Yaksha, a Deva, and a Naga. So representatives of the five human and non-human communities of the Buddha's disciples. And this occurred on Mount Sripada in Sri Lanka, which is therefore still a pilgrimage site. And this was gone through here in a recent weekend, and will be gone through again. And it's explained in some of our texts. Anyway, that Tantra, called the Sutra, which is the fundamental scripture of what is called Anuyoga, describes five aspects of fulfillment. And these are the action, the materials, intention, samadhi, and suchness, recognition of the name. That way, there are many such classifications and enumerations and prescriptions of means of purification of Samaya in the Nyingpo teachings. If we collect all of them into their essence, they consist of this. First of all, you set up a accomplishment mandala. The accomplishment mandala of whichever deity or set of deities of the three roots you are using for the basis of confession. So Guru, Yidam, or Dakini. And this brings up the point, 2 points Lama said. First of all, that although we emphasize this act of confession and reconciliation and fulfillment in the secret, in the subtle essence of Padmasambhava practice, we are also doing this. This is in fact what we are doing and why we are doing it when we do the Guru Rinpoche practice on the 10th day and the Dakini practice on the 25th day. Also, even when we perform ceremonies with a particular other emphasis, such as the removal of obstacles and so on, it will always, always, always include the full action of confession and fulfillment. And at this point, Lama interjected. We talk about the three roots, Gurus, Yidams, and Dakinis. And as you have heard many, many times, ultimately, all three are included in the first one, the Guru, or Lama. Everything depends upon the Lama. So therefore, as is often said, it is quite true that devotion to the Guru, devotion to the Lama, devotion to the Guru, meditation on the Guru, supplication of the Guru, that these are sufficient. That if you do that, that will include automatically accomplishment of the yidams and dakis, that those don't really need to be done separately. So, the good news is that it's actually very simple. It comes down to your relationship to the Guru. Unfortunately, that's where you, he said, have a problem. Of necessity, to be a Guru, the Guru must appear human. You can't communicate at your level with non-human beings. You can't have a Guru who's the Sambhogakaya. You need your Guru to be Nimanakaya, flesh and blood human being. Because the Guru, to function as your Guru, must appear among you as a human being. You project all of your expectations, all of your primitive, narrow-minded, habitual, and cultural beliefs, and indeed, all of your prejudices and anxieties onto every Guru with whom you interact. We have a much easier time relating to the yidams and dakis because we don't interact with them. They're objects of imagination for us at this point. But we interact with the Guru. And that is why the Guru is more powerful in our lives, but also why we have trouble dealing with the Guru. The proper way, Lama said, to relate to a Guru or Lama is not to study their behavior, but to study their intention, to try to understand their message, to try to get what they are trying to get through to you. But you don't do that. You do the opposite. You focus on and invariably judge and quite often attempt to control your Lama or your Guru's behavior. And you do so with, if I may say so, he said, an abnormal level of ignorance. Because you have additional issues, additional expectations, additional prejudices produced by your culture. You're not supposed to study your Guru's behavior. You're supposed to study their message. Then back to the text. So the first step is setting up an accomplishment on the love, one of the three roots as described. And then you set forth offerings around it. And as you will notice when we do the subtle essence of Vajrasattva, both the outer and inner offerings must be 100-fold. There have to be 100 sets of each of the offerings. And then there will also be additional particular offerings, such as the various termas and whatnot that you'll see from the shrine. And all of this, since you're trying to accomplish purification, needs to be clean and it needs to be beautiful. It can't be sloppy. It has to be beautifully arranged. Then once the external mandala has been created, you then gather and you generate a clear and stable samadhi of the self generation and front generation mandalas. You add to that the nail of emanation and gathering, light rays in connection with the repetition of mantra. And in the repetition and in the associated liturgies, the focus is on appealing to the deities by means of, with reference to their vows, their commitment to benefit beings and purify you. You also further invite the mandala deities again and again as guests, and countless other deities filling the sky around the mandala in order to continue to gather the accumulations. And you do this physically with a great demonstration of physical respect, performing what are called prone prostrations, which means your body is fully stretched out. Strictly speaking, Lama said, prone prostrations actually refer to falling down flat, not even falling down in stages. But he said, I can't advise you to do that here because you're so prone to injury at the slightest cause, and so prone to litigation. So he said, so don't go out of here saying, Lama Tratop told me to fall down flat on the ground and do prostrations. And then there are other ways, or you can simply do the placement of the 5 limbs, where you touch your knees, the palms of your hands, and your forehead to the ground, as we do for ceremonies. And then you recite the inexpressible ultimate confession. We use that frequently. We use it during all of the Dzogchen practices, and we use it, of course, during subtle essence Padmasambhava. The Lama said, personally, I recite it every day, but I'm aware that there are issues, that you have issues connected with my advising you to chant things. Another aspect of these purification practices, which you may have noticed, is that you call all of the peaceful and lawful deities by name. Sometimes these are proper names, and sometimes these names are simply the name of their appearance, like, hey, you snake-headed goddess, and hey, you bear-headed goddess, and so on. You are actually calling to them by name for 2 reasons. One reason is you want to feel confident that you have their attention. There are Buddhas, of course you have their attention, but you don't know that. So you want to feel confident that you have their attention. The other reason is that as there are Buddhas, reciting the names of Buddhas, especially those connected with purification, is one of the most powerful means of purification. So the act of confession, the act of physical prostration and reciting the names of the peaceful and lawful deities in the context of that act, which during the subtle essence of Vajrasattva practice happens, that's the last thing before lunch. Just to put it in your context, is the physical aspect. And then we have the verbal. The second aspect is the verbal aspect. And the principal verbal act of restoration or confession is the meditation on and mantra repetition of Vajrasattva. It was called the single all-embodying deity of confession because just as Vajrasattva embodies what are called the 100 families, that is to say the 5 families with all their subdivisions, his mantra, his 100-syllable mantra, embodies all of the 100 peaceful and lawful deities and the 100 families. So therefore, you recite his mantra, the Vajrasattva mantra, and meditate upon him principally as a principal means, verbal means of confession. You also engage in various specific confessions directed at him, outer, inner, secret, very secret, and so on. And especially what is called desperate confession. The best known desperate confession is one that we use not here, not during our subtle essence Vajrasattva practice, because we keep it quite brief. I know you don't think it's brief. Believe me, it's brief in the greater context of our tradition. But we do use it during the Dzogchen retreat, at least some years. And it's called the Desperate Confession of Rudra. And this is, these are the words of Rudra confessing everything he had done to, usually it's said to be to the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara, which I see. Now, it's this verbal confessions, because it's the verbal aspect of purification, mean you have to use your voice. You can only purify verbal wrongdoing with verbal good deeds. So you don't have to scream, but you have to chant out loud. And at this point, Lama went on a digression. Again, don't kill the messenger, folks. And I say that because you all get mad at the things he says, and then you're afraid to give him shit about it, so you give it to me. Right now. Don't ever come back to me with things that Lama said that you didn't like. You got a problem with him? You go to him. Don't come to me. Capiche? Good. Okay, now, what Lama said was, I've said this again and again and again. I tell you, chant out loud. And I know you can do it because you constantly talk. You can't shut up. Not one of you. You talk all the time. And you're great at making lots and lots of noise when you're gossiping, bad-mouthing one another, or otherwise making a nuisance. Your voices work fine. Your vocal cords work fine. But they stop working as soon as you sit down and try to practice. You used to collectively chant quietly. So I would try to encourage you, use your voice. You follow these melodies exist so we can chant out loud. And it got worse. And every time I mention it, it gets worse. So I recognize there's the danger that you'll just not chant at all, just sit there like showroom dummies. But again, I urge you, these acts of liturgical confession only work if they're out loud. So don't be afraid, don't be too quiet. The third aspect of confession is the mental aspect. And while, of course, there are mental and verbal aspects in the other two, right? The real emphasis here in the mental aspect of confession is the confession in recollection of the view. And this is called the confession through resting in the expanse of the view. And this is why you'll see that in the confession liturgies, there are frequent references to the fact that ultimately there is nothing to confess. And the reason for this is that, as we saw before, the only reason we can purify actions and their imprints is because they don't truly exist. So therefore, we approach purification most effectively when we approach it within that understanding, within that recognition. For beginners, the confidence or a confident belief in the ultimate emptiness of wrongdoing gives you the courage to confess. And for practitioners with more training, actual recognition of the view is what brings, finally, a true purification. So ultimately, we need to confess in a state free of reification of the three aspects. And therefore, while confessing, do so in a state of all-pervasive, effortless, primordial purity. If you can't do that, at least remember that that is where we are headed. And then common to body, speech, and mind is the confession before all Buddhas in general, what's called the confession of all Buddhas, and the regretful admission of all wrongdoing, not only the specified Samaya violations and contamination, but all wrongdoing. And with the conscious effort and the conscious thought in your mind, I conceal nothing. I am holding nothing back. I keep nothing in reserve. I reveal, admit, and thereby free myself from all wrongdoing whatsoever. So, in that way, using all of your faculties, body, speech, and mind, and their inseparable unity, you recite all of the great confessions that are extolled in the various tantras, such as the Tantra of confession and the boundless expanse, and so on. So that is the first of the two means of the purification of Samaya, confession. The second, of course, is fulfillment, and we'll go through that this afternoon. At this point, to conclude Lama's asides, of course, one of the focuses here, as we saw at the beginning of this morning's session, is on what's called Samaya contamination, or contagion. And since we don't keep a record of everywhere we go and everyone we come into contact with. How do we know? And he said it's actually very, very easy to know. Now, to understand this, first of all, you need to remember that this can happen to anyone. Samaya contamination does not only happen to ordinary practitioners like ourselves. He said it can even happen to lamas, even to high lamas. And it's one of the things they have to beware of. As the omniscient Chokgyur Lingpa once said, I have no enemy other than Samaya breakers, and I fear nothing except Samaya contamination. No matter who you are, this can and will affect you. So therefore, while in a sense we're talking about something that could be a basis for feeling bad about yourself or for judgment, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself. Because this is just something that can happen to practitioners. It's like getting sick. Don't feel bad because you got sick, but then as soon as you can, deal with it. Well, what are the symptoms of Samaya contamination? Lama said it's very easy to recognize. Sometimes you will spend time around someone. It could be a Dharma teacher or a Dharma friend or a group of Dharma friends, or you can go to another community and be around them and so on. And for a few days afterwards, you will feel happier, just happier than you usually are. Your mind will be clearer than whatever your norm, whatever your baseline is. And you'll have more faith, more devotion in your teachers. That's a sign of what's called Samaya blessing, that you've been around someone who has good, clean Samaya. And just as you can be contaminated by Samaya breakers, you are blessed not only by gurus, but also by Samaya keepers. When you are around those with clean, good Samaya, you will notice an improvement in your way of being. That doesn't require any action. Other times, you'll be around people that you're not used to being around, and you'll find that for a few days, you can't even chant your daily practice properly. You can't think clearly. You're negative about everything. Everything in your world seems to have become your enemy. That's the feeling of Samaya contamination. And especially when that occurs and there's no other reason, like it's not like you went out and killed people or something. It's like you didn't do anything bad, but this just suddenly comes over you like a dark cloud. That's what that is. And what you need to do when that happens is two things. First of all, perform whatever acts of confession and purification you can as soon as possible on your own. Don't wait for April or the next big puja or anything. Do it right away. And keep on doing it until the condition improves. Second thing is, you need to avoid that person or those persons. But just as there is no judgment of yourself in having become contaminated. Just as it doesn't mean you're bad, it just you were at the wrong place at the wrong time. There is actually, in spite of the need to avoid such persons, there is no judgment of them either. It's not that it's different from, Lama said, it's different from conventional shunning. Most religions practice shunning for those who have violated the rules of that particular religion. The difference between this and shunning is that there's no judgment here. It's a matter of survival, not a matter of judgment. You avoid that person or those persons, that group, whatever it is, in recognition of the fact that their Buddha nature is just as good as yours. They have the same potential for Buddhahood as you. So ultimately speaking, you're no better than them. It's not that you're too good to keep company with them. It's that you're too weak. You just can't carry that level of burden. And that's okay. You have to admit it. So when you avoid them, which you must, I said you must. When you avoid them, you do so without judgment. Certainly without hatred. And you do so not only for your own good, but for theirs. Because it will not help them, it will harm them if their company or their influence harms you. Oh, that's it.
That's okay. Now that I get a little light, sorry. Oh, so nam de dom je se ba ni dom ne ye be dana ba de ye ga nam je ba la ro ba ye se be so de ro wa yo ge wa de je bo so na ye je zo so na ye je de zo we ta ba ge ni lo ba yo sa jo sen ne ren bo lo na je je ba nyam ba me ba na kong ne kong du pe wa yo sim je nam je de da de je nge ro tam je ta da tom ba sa jo sa ba gang da sa yo ba de da gan je mo la ro ba yo sa je da me ga ja gang de ja da da le ba sa je me zo de sa ma je si je zo da ja pe tra ji yo. Thank you. Thank you.